Most people expect the equinox to feel like a reset, cleaner, more decisive, like something finally clicking into place. But there's a phase in every major transition where that isn't what happens at all, where something has clearly changed, but you still can't fully tell what direction it's moving in. Although it can feel like confusion, it's something much more specific than that. Over the last few days, things may have felt quieter, less reactive, more neutral, but today can feel subtly different from that. Not necessarily loud or clear, in fact, harder to read. You might notice moments of clarity, but they also might not hold. And you may detect a sense of movement coming, but without a clear direction yet. Or maybe situations that feel different, but not fully resolved. And the instinct of the mind is to usually try to define that quickly, try to figure out what's changing. But that instinct is actually working against you right now. And there's a specific structural reason why. What most people don't realize is that today carries a very specific quality, one that only becomes legible during certain threshold moments like this. It's not just that things feel unclear. It's that multiple things feel both true and unresolved at the same time. Part of you probably feels finished with something, and then another part of you feels like it's just starting to move, and then another part is still trying to make sense of everything. That combination isn't a problem with your perception, it's just the structure of this moment. And here's what's actually happening today. We are 2 days past the Pisces moon, which softened and dissolved a lot of internal structure for us. And then today, the sun enters Aries right around the equinox moment, initiating a new directional cycle for us. And at the same time, Mercury is stationing direct, which changes how the mind processes and organizes information. So you don't have one shift landing today, you have 3. And it's all happening at once, but not instantly. Mechanically, here's what makes today harder to read. In signal systems, when multiple frequencies overlap, clarity doesn't increase. It temporarily decreases because the old signal hasn't fully dropped away and the new signal hasn't fully separated itself yet. So instead of one clear pattern, you get an interference pattern. It's kind of like being between 2 stations on a radio dial. The signal just isn't clear. Here's where you might feel this most right now. Think about a conversation or a dynamic that's been shifting for you lately. You can probably sense that your response is different now. Maybe you're less charged or less invested. The internal shift has already happened, but at the same time, you're not fully clear on what replaces it yet. So the interaction feels different but unresolved. You notice the shift inside it, but you can't quite name it clearly. That's the gap. It's the gap between the internal change that's already happened and the external clarity that hasn't arrived yet. That's the interference pattern felt personally. Something that I have consistently seen in transition windows like this is that the mind expects the threshold moment to arrive with immediate clarity, but it usually doesn't. What it does instead is expose where your internal state has already moved and where your thinking and external decisions haven't quite caught up yet. And that gap can feel uncomfortable precisely because it exists. It's not a signal that something went wrong necessarily. It's a signal that something has already changed. So what's the most useful thing to do when you are sitting inside overlapping signals that haven't separated yet? Well, the question that most people ask is, why is this not clear yet? But that question is looking in the wrong direction. The more accurate question to ask, the one that actually gives you usable information right now, is which signal is actually strengthening underneath the interference? Because even when clarity isn't stable yet, direction is already forming. It's just not isolated enough to read clearly from the surface. But if you get quiet enough and stop trying to resolve what isn't ready to resolve, you can actually feel which way the signal is already moving. So if today feels less like a clean reset and more like a mix of some movement, some stillness, and partial clarity, that's an accurate perception of a genuinely complex moment. We're not in the pre-moment anymore, and we're also not fully past it either. We're right at the intersection where one phase has completed internally and where a new direction is just beginning to organize, and where the mind is still catching up to both. The most useful thing you can bring to this moment isn't going to be interpretation. It's going to be patience with the signal. Let it separate on its own, because trying to force clarity and resolution inside an interference pattern just creates noise. So over the next day or so, just notice what feels different, even if you can't fully explain it yet. Don't look for what's resolved. Don't look for what's clear. Just notice what feels different. That's usually where the real change is already happening. And right now, noticing is enough. If this resonates, feel free to subscribe. I'll continue tracking these patterns behind the change as this cycle unfolds in the days ahead. I'm Katya, and I will see you in the next one.